everybody. Welcome to another edition of the 1Mby1M podcast. 1Mby1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator in the world. And today I will be speaking with Navid Alipour from Analytics Ventures. Navid, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sramana. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us a bit about Analytics Ventures and yourself. What are you looking at? What is the investment thesis? Let's get acquainted.
Absolutely. So Analytics Ventures, we are based here in San Diego, California. And I like to describe Analytics Ventures as a three-legged platform. Think of it as a three-legged chair. One leg is our fund. So we have a dedicated fund. And the mandate from our investors, though, is to invest in companies that we co-found with other scientists, academics, entrepreneurs, or other public, private corporations under the venture studio model, right? And so the venture studio model, as we all know, it's not a new model. One of the best known is Idea Labs in Pasadena, California, that Bill Gross started. Not the bond fund manager that used to be on CNBC, another Bill Gross. Of course, we have Science Labs that Dollar Shave Club came out of. In your neck of the woods in the Bay, we have Atomic VC. And, of course, other larger VC funds like Canaan Partners or Domain Associates or Avalon Ventures have from time to time deployed this venture studio model to literally help create a company that did not exist, whether it's with a scientist or entrepreneur or they license a technology out of a university. So with that, so one leg is our fund, and then one leg is our studio where, we have our own, full-time marketing, HR, recruiter, analysts that help accelerate the growth of the company so that, the CEO can focus on building the team and the product and selling that service or product. And then the last leg, and I think it's what really differentiates us the most, is we have our own artificial intelligence lab of data scientists. So 100% PhDs in physics and math and whatnot. And from what we've been told, I haven't validated it, but we've been told we may be the largest independent AI lab in Southern California. Independent being that we're not an academic institution like Stanford, MIT, UCSD, UC Berkeley. And we're not a Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon. So that's the high level of Analytics Ventures as a platform, but we do have a dedicated fund.
And how big is the fund?
So we haven't closed the fund yet, and so I can't disclose that as of now, but we will be able to share that soon.
You haven't closed, as in this is the first fund? Is this just starting up?
So this is our first fund, so that's I'm glad you brought that up. So Analytics Ventures has been around for 6 years, but the first, call it 4.5, 5 years, we were investing our own capital. So we're 3 equal partners, and we've, from investments and companies we've started had various degrees of success. The largest being one of my partners, Blaise Barlet, started a company called Website Story back in the late 90s, one of the few internet companies that made money from day one that ultimately IPO'd and was acquired by Adobe for $1.7 billion. And so we initially were investing our own capital and then bringing in co-investors. And then what happened was we had some co-investors in some of the companies we'd started, like Curemetrics, which is our company that has been now recognized globally as the best company that detects breast cancer using their artificial intelligence algorithms. So as we started some of these companies, some co-investors that had got in at later valuations, what happened is they said, hey, we love these companies you guys have started, but how do we get founding shares like you have? Because at the time we were just an LLC investing our own capital. We're not a dedicated fund with LPs, with investors. And so that's where in talking to our attorneys at Cooley, we said, how do we do this bigger, better, faster? And they said, well, why don't you form a dedicated fund so that you're not just investing your capital? And so now the companies we start, Analytics Ventures Fund 1 Limited Partners is literally a co-founder on the cap table with the other co-founders. So we, with that, decided that Curemetrics was the first one we did in the AI space, and we decided our mandate from our LPs. They said, hey, we want you to start other companies that are applying artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning to clean structured data, and that's very important. So we can come back to that it's clean data that's collected. But by applying this AI, you can make a prediction or recommendation of forecast, or you can detect something that does not belong. And by doing one of those things, you're going to increase revenues, you're going to decrease costs by bringing operational efficiencies. Or in the healthcare sense, what we're proud of, again, we're vertical agnostic, but we're most proud of our healthcare companies in that you're not just saving money and bringing efficiencies, but you're prolonging life and saving life as well. As we all know, in the breast cancer example, if you detected earlier, the odds of survival are significantly higher. And so that's where we're proud of that aspect.
Mm-hmm. So how many companies in parallel are you going to be doing? You've said you've done 3 so far, right?
I know. In fact, if you look at our website, we have 8 up there right now.
Okay.
And we do have 2 more in the pipeline that we have not officially announced, and they are with corporate partners. So we are still very open to starting companies with individuals, like we did with Curemetrics. But what has happened increasingly is, one thing we did is when we formed our AI lab, the premise was, hey, we don't want to reinvent the wheel at every company that will need, 10 data scientists, call it. And as we all know, the really good data scientists are heavy in demand. I think there's an article in the New York Times that said there's only 10,000 real data scientists. A lot of people say they do AI, but it's really just glorified business intelligence, or they're just using open source tools like Google's TensorFlow or Apache or Caffe or other tools, which that's fine. Some tools are good for ABC, however, not XYZ and vice versa. And so our team can custom build their own algorithms as well, we pride ourselves on. And so what ended up happening is we built our AI lab, which is one of our portfolio companies, by the way. And in doing this, the purpose initially was just for ourselves and our portfolio companies, but we ended up being contacted by the Fortune 500 companies on down to venture-backed startups that wanted to leverage our bench. And so in doing this, we do have a outward-facing arm of our lab called Dynam.ai, where we go in, companies large and small, and help them with their applying artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning to their respective vertical. And what's happened, interesting enough, is in some of these larger companies, we learn about their business, we identify some other opportunities, and we go to them and say, would you like us to, do this internally for you? Or as the conversations sometimes progress, it makes sense to do a joint venture. So that's where now we've done a joint venture, for example, with a private digital media agency in the advertising spend. That company is called AdTheos, Theos meaning God in Greek. So the website's not live yet. It's been in stealth mode. But just like we're not healthcare experts, let alone breast cancer experts, and we've built the company that's recognized as being the best in the world detecting breast cancer, we're not advertising experts, but we partnered with an entity that is, a corporation that is, and so they're the digital media experts, the advertising experts. They have the data. They know the pain points and the problems they want to solve, and they know who the clients are. So you marry that domain expertise with our deep bench of AI experts, and we then can develop a product, a software that not only they can use, but it's something that then we can scale that out and build a business out of that.
So what constitutes the profile of a founder that you would want to found a company with?
That's a very good question. So if it's not a corporate founder, whether it's a public insurance company, which we're talking a very large one, or this private advertising company, it's usually going to be someone that, whether they're a scientist or an academic or an entrepreneur, they have a certain domain expertise, but they can't take the risk of quitting their job. They have a husband, a wife, a mortgage, 2 kids, or they're an entrepreneur and they're busy doing something, and they say, hey, when I'm done with this, I have this other idea. And so what we say is, as we all know, that window can close. Let's not wait. Let's do this together now. Let's launch it together. Help us bring in the right CEO and CTO and get the team going. And as it makes sense, then, jump in and as where it's de-risked. So a really good example I'll give. So, we have 2 healthcare companies, very similar sounding names. One CureMetrics, I mentioned, the other is CureMatch, MATCH. The only thing they have in common is that we started them, we named them. They're both software AI companies, and they both fight cancer, just in very different ways. Where CureMetrics is a diagnostic for the FDA because it detects breast cancer, CureMatch is a decision support tool providing actionable intelligence for the oncologists. And while our third partner, Andreas, has a marketing background, and he joined Blaze and I after we started Analytics Ventures, and CureMatch it existed. And while he doesn't like that the names are similar per se, I actually do, because they're sister companies, both taking the fight to cancer. And so with CureMatch, what happened is we met a lady at the Moores Cancer Center. Her name is Dr. Rizal Kurzrock. That's Kurz Rock. And if you look her up, she's famous in the oncology world and the precision medicine world, travels the world talking about precision medicine. She's, I believe her title at the Moores Cancer Center here at UC San Diego is Deputy Director of Oncology. She's a practicing oncologist, does research. And when we met her, they developed a version 1 algorithm in partnership with a scientist at the Supercomputer Center here that they've been using for 2.5 years already. And what it was doing, in short, was, patient has cancer. They get their biopsy sequenced by companies like Foundation Medicine that Roche just bought the rest of for $2.6 billion, or Guardant, which is up in San Francisco and just IPO'd recently. And there's some others, but those are the 2 big ones. So they sequence the physical biopsy of the cancer, and they put out called the 23andMe of the cancer sample, saying this is the genetic makeup of this cancer. Well, great. What are you going to do with that? So they answered that what now. They developed their own database that included FDA-approved drugs, open source research, clinical trials, and you name it, other things are always updating. And so they would take that 31-page PDF that Foundation Medicine puts out for the oncologist for the makeup of the cancer, and to have a 3-drug combo, that's 4.5 million combinations. So no human brain, I don't care how smart an oncologist is, no human brain can process 4.5 million combinations. And so that's what they would do. They would take that the PDF and their own database, and the algorithm would match and recommend the top 3. And so when we met her and she showed us the results, and they were using this every Wednesday at the tumor board that the large hospitals like MD Anderson and Moores and Johns Hopkins and get together weekly for the oncologists to discuss the cases. And they were using this tool, and with over 1,000 patients when we met them, with great results. And so we said, have you thought of starting a company? This is amazing and belongs to, should have, people outside of the Moore Cancer Center, the VIPs that have access there should have access to this. And she said, well, I'm a practicing oncologist. I'm not going to, quit what I'm doing to start a company. I haven't done that before. And so we said, well, don't quit your job. Let's start this company together. help us, find the right team to launch it. And then we did that. And she still is at the Moore Cancer Center, but she's the founder of the company. And Igor, the Russian scientist that was at the supercomputer center, he ended up joining the company full time. And so that's where we're looking for the domain experts. They don't have to be entrepreneurs per se. They certainly can be, but they have to have an expertise in a certain field, whether it's healthcare, ag tech, fintech, cybersecurity, real estate. Again, any industry and every industry has data that you could unlock value from by applying artificial intelligence to it. And so they don't need to be the AI experts. We have that team of PhDs. They just need to be the domain experts.
I see. Okay, interesting. Are you shooting for unicorns?
Very, very, I think, insightful question. While we certainly wouldn't shy away from hitting home runs with unicorns, our business model is, to stay with that baseball analogy, is we want to be able to make money for ourselves and our investors and other co-founders by hitting singles and doubles. So I think something you've alluded to before in other podcasts is, your traditional venture fund invests in 20 deals, knowing that, call it 10 of them will likely fail, and they'll have a couple of 1x, 2x, maybe 3x returns. So they're really betting on 1 or 2 home runs to make the fund. While, and so everything they look at has to have 10x unicorn potential, right? They might not invest in a deal that the total addressable market might not be large enough. And it could be a wonderful entrepreneur and founding team, but they think that, the total addressable market, might only equal a $100 million exit, let's say, let alone forget if it's a $50 million exit. For us, that's very different, because we can look at something and say, hey, if we can build this and own a founding piece of it and get an exit for, let's stay with that, let's put a low number, let's say 20 million, 30 million. And I say low in that's incredibly low in a venture sense, right? But if we can do that and sell it then that's going to not only do well for us and our investors, but it's actually, in hindsight, a lot of times, it's even much better for the founders, because often, there's been many situations where a company after 2-3 years has a certain amount of traction and they get an offer. And the board, being made up of VCs, will vote it down because they're like, no, we're not going to sell for 50 million or 80 or 200 million. We need to go for unicorn, right? And sometimes it happens, but often not, as we all know. Things go wrong. There's other competition.
Well, there's another, point that, based on your investment thesis, I do think that verticals have different, domain-specific workflows and different domain-specific opportunities to apply AI, but these are not always, billion-dollar TAM opportunities. Many of these are niche opportunities, smaller TAM opportunities. So even if you force it, it's not going to become a billion-dollar company. So you kind of have to design it from the beginning for a smaller exit. But you can build fantastic businesses focusing on these niche domains, especially applying cutting-edge technology to niche domains is a very, very powerful opportunity. I'm very much aware of that opportunity. We see stuff like that all the time, and I think it's an astute analysis on your part to focus on some of these.
I think you summed it up very accurately, and yeah, I think we're in agreement there in that companies in the U.S. My partner Blaise, who is from France, he says CEOs in the U.S., they brag about how much money they raised. Instead, they should be bragging about how much money they make. And it's very different, right? In the U.S.,
very different, and you can end up raising $100 million and just end up with like a itsy-bitsy 5 million, 7 million total exit, whereas if you control your capital raise and manage the exit process well, you could be making 25, 30, 50 million even from a smaller exit.
Absolutely. I remember reading an article maybe a year or two ago, and I don't remember the name of the company, but it sold for $300 million. The founder, the CEO, only netted $1 million because they raised so much money.
Oh my goodness! That's horrible.
Right, and then on the other end, and so everyone's patting him on the back. Great job, you made it. You can retire. Not the case. And in another case, I know a husband-wife team that started a company out of college that didn't raise a penny. They didn't even give options to their employees. I'm not saying that's. I'm not judging that. I'm just to paint you this extreme example.
Yeah.
They sold their company for $40 million cash.
Yeah. We have case study after case study of these kinds of stories. We have over 1,000 case studies, including 400 plus bootstrapped case studies. So we know this inside out. And I've just started writing another series on LinkedIn called Bootstrapping, why, best of bootstrapping, addressing why it's so important and what are the nuances. And I don't know if you saw the piece that I wrote recently, Bootstrapping to Exit. All these topics need to be out there in a much more subtle and much more, nuanced way. Not the way New York Times wrote. Erin Griffith wrote this. Entrepreneurs are asking VCs to get lost. That's a stupid point of view too. But so yeah. All right. So we're in agreement. We are philosophically in a lot of things. I think. I'm going to ask you, what do you want to convey to the audience as your parting question, and then we will see what comes up in due course in terms of collaborating.
Yeah, no, I think something that we want to communicate as we're getting the word out about what Analytics Ventures is doing is one. First off, geographically, we are currently just. Our current companies happen to all be in San Diego, but our hands are not tied. We could launch a company in Berlin or in London or in Des Moines, Iowa.
So you're not worried about geography, given your high-touch venture studio model. You're not worried about geography.
Well, so let me add the fine print there, right? The footnote. The data science team is here in San Diego at first, right? But if we have a corporate partner, let's say a company out of Chicago that needs us to have a presence there, we can have a presence there. So this does lend itself a little more to if we have a corporate partner where we can then set up a presence there and in San Diego. And as we get the companies going, then they need their own everything, right? So while we have a director of marketing at our studio that works on all the companies, and started out of the gate, you can't have a high caliber marketing person maybe, but this way the cost is shared. Well, as a company matures, they're going to need their own marketing person full time. Well, that's the same with the AI expertise, right? As the company grows, our data scientists, if there's a project they just happen to passionately be in love with, they can go full time to that company. Otherwise, our head data scientists, we have a technical test that we give to anyone that applies, which we're always looking for new hires, and if they pass that test, if they don't pass it, we don't hire them. That's a non-starter. But anyone we hire for our current and future companies or for the lab itself has to pass that test. So as we hire full-time teams for each company, we're going to maintain the same caliber of expertise. So if we launch a company in Chicago, just to say with that example, in time, as a company grows there, everyone would be there. So we're not geographically limited. And so we're looking for, individual domain experts, be they entrepreneurs or scientists, in any industry. And you don't have to be an AI expert, right? You just have to say, God, if I have this data, and if I could make a prediction, a recommendation, a forecast, or detect something out of this data, this is going to make a lot of money, or this is going to save a lot of money in whatever capacity, right? And then we want to talk to you. And if you're a corporate, if someone at a corporation, whether at the senior exec level, a board member, or not, in the middle of the corporate ladder, but you have a certain domain expertise, whether individually or at your company, we would love to talk to you, because everyone from the CEO on down is reading the Wall Street Journal on how AI is the new electricity. It's the fourth industrial revolution. I think Mark Cuban said, if you're not thinking of how to apply to your business, you'll be a dinosaur in the next 3 years. And while I don't think it'll be 3 years, we agree with this premise that everyone needs to think about how AI is going to be applied to their business. And so what's happening is these CEOs on down, they're saying, hey, we don't want to be the next Barnes & Noble or Blockbuster Video that didn't adapt and went the way of the dinosaurs. And so they're looking to bring AI expertise into their companies. And so that's where we're looking to partner with them, because the fact, what we found, and this is our opinion, I'm not saying this is exactly how it is, but what we found is the really exceptional data scientists, they don't want to work for corporate America. By that, what I mean is, if they do, they want to work for the sexy tech companies, the Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon. And even then, some of them don't. But they don't want to work for Procter & Gamble or Hershey's or Coca-Cola or Johnson & Johnson. And now this isn't blanket across the board, but it's very difficult for these non-tech corporate companies to hire top data science teams, right? And so this will change eventually as there's more talent. But for those that don't want to work at the non-tech companies, that's where those companies are then looking at groups like ours to either bring in on existing projects or to launch joint ventures that they'll have a significant ownership interest in.
All right. Very good. Good conversation, good, interesting insights. Thank you for sharing, Navid, and thank you, audience, for listening today. We will be back soon with another edition of the 1 Million by 1 Million podcast. In the meantime, if you're looking for help with the strategy for your venture, come to one of the free public roundtables. The schedule's on the website, 1Mby1M.com, and we'll work together on your business. Thank you for coming today, and see you soon.